Good morning, everyone. My name is Selenia Romani, and I'm going to talk about the literature in the Victorian age, especially literature as the novel and the poetry. So let's start. Okay, let's start with the novel. So the novel's development is connected to some factors, of course, of that period, of the Victorian period. So we can find the increasing importance of the middle class, of course, because many of the protagonists of those novels were people from the middle bourgeois, so the middle class. Then, of course, we have the increase of the reading public thanks to the diffusion of magazines and libraries, and of course, thanks to the spreading of literacy. As you can see, I've put here the image of the Strand magazine, which was one of the most popular magazine of that period. And then we have, of course, the improvements in the industrial technology, such as the cheaper way of printing books and, of course, of printing magazines. Okay, let's start talking about the novel, but let's start with the early Victorian novelists. So the early Victorian novelists are those authors that the critics divide and put in the first part of the Victorian age, so the part before Darwin. Okay, so these novelists, they denounce the negative aspects of society, but without questioning the system. So they question the aspects, but they actually didn't do anything to contrast them. They set their work in contemporary England with solid Christian values. And of course, one of the most important novelists was Charles Dickens. And Charles Dickens, along with Elizabeth Gaskell and others, talked about social problems and created that kind of novel that we called humanitarian, which denounced the evils and abuses caused by the sorry, here we are. Caused by the industrialization. And then, of course, we have another type of novel, which is the novel of manners, which is more of a domestic novel, richer in psychological analysis, and more it's more about upper class in setting and accurate in structure. Um, and it shows as it targets the hypocrisy and anti-heroic features of the materialistic Victorian age, with which it shared the same moral attitude. Think about William Thackeray and his book, The Vanity Fair. Okay, let's move on to the late Victorian novelists, so the authors after Darwin. Here we have Thomas Hardy and Henry James. So these novelists talked about the growing crisis in the moral and religious values. The characters of those novels were outsiders, so they live according to the laws of their own nature. There was a general dissatisfaction of that age, so you could see the dissatisfaction inside this novel, into these novels. And of course, there was a new type of realism or naturalism, which rejected sentimentalism to focus on the character psychology. And a single, let's say, something which is apart from early and late Victorian novelists is the children's literature, especially Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland, and the exploration of the language with its limits and paradoxes. This is another, let's say, another part of the late Victorian novel. Okay, I wanted to have a separated part for the women's voice. So we're talking about women in Victorian age. A woman in Victorian age was basically um, described as the angel of the house. So this pure angelic creature who was usually defenseless and usually also a victim in the story. Um, of course, why? Of course, because women in that period had extremely restricted rights, and women's novels wanted to explore the extreme of passion and violence. The novels of women's novels were more romantic in spirit and took some aspects from the Gothic tradition. Think about Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre from the Bronte sisters, Emily and Charlotte. Um, and especially if you think about Jane Eyre from Charlotte Bronte, we can talk about the Bildungsroman. What a Bildungsroman or novel of formation was one of the most popular genres. Which trace the life of the protagonist from infancy to early adulthood. Of course, apart from Charles Dickens and his David Copperfield and Great Expectations, also Jane Eyre was one of the main one of the main novel, who was kind of a Bildungsroman. Um, and the main concern of these novels was the relation of the individual to society, in particular, the way the individual could find his or her place in society through compromise and a degree of conformism. Okay, so this was the first part about the Victorian literature. Just wait for my next video to see the second part. Thank you.